Hello, week 2, sports week, Unpicked back for another week. Good to see you, Ting.
Good to see you too.
We had so many comments on our first video back last week. Oh, I went through them all and read them.
Got a little out of hand, didn't it?
Did it just? And I did comment on them. Thank you very much. It's so nice to see so many of you back again. We recognise those usernames. We recognise your names, and I think someone did say we're like I think it was Tom. He said they're like migratory birds that have come back to watch the Sewing Bee Unpicked, and we love having you back. It doesn't matter what you watch, and I think I said this before. That's the beauty of YouTube. You have the content that you like that you can watch. So we welcome you back with open arms for these next 10 weeks. I've taken a selection of comments, Ting, as always. We start off by looking at a few of those comments from last week's chat. We had a debate about colour, didn't we? And lots of other things that came up. Let's have a quick look through. The first one, Helen. On the colour debate, did Desmi say, I don't like brown? That to me should be part of the judging. But most importantly, at the end there, love Unpicked more than the actual show. Isn't that nice?
I think that's what we did say, though, isn't it? Is that there was an argument for that garment to have another colour on top.
Yeah.
That was not the reason that she mentioned colour. She just doesn't like brown, and
yes.
that was the t-shirts. Was it? I've forgotten already.
It was. Yeah.
So
I can imagine the producers being a bit sneaky there, going, "Oh, we know Esme doesn't like brown, so let's chuck in a few brown tops, and if someone chooses them." Yay, we've got some good editing here. Right, next one. Rachel, good to see you again, Rachel, a name we remember. So glad you're back, but I am again throwing a slipper before the show even started. At the beginning of the show, they previewed a lot of outfits that are obviously to come. I missed that. I must have blinked.
No, I think I was running back from the toilet, you know. It's like the old days when you were a kid and you had to run during the ad breaks. I heard the music and was like, oh, I need to go to the loo quickly. So I probably missed that bit.
Brilliant. And then next, Practical Stitches. Good to have you back too, Shari. Welcome back. And then Ting, you have a slipper coming your way all the way from Canada. And goes on to explain about the denim skirt, which caused so much discussion in the group. Wonderful. Some saying, yes, that should have been doable. Many saying no, because clearly they didn't finish. Many saying it should have been the same pattern from season 1, which they had 5 hours for, Ting. Someone found out. They went back and rewatched it. 5 hours.
So, I mean, I saw some of these comments as well. I probably read this one as well and dodged the slipper as it flew across the sea. But I think, you know, when we then look at, again, last night's episode, you do then have to start to question whether they are being given enough time full stop. Forget whether the skirt had enough time or the fleece had enough time. It does seem that they're only really giving them just about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, for a basic T-shirt, maybe, you know, when you factor in all things like stretchy jersey material and stuff like that. But you know, the fact, I mean, we had more people finish this week than we did last week. But when you start looking at it and going, okay, well, more than 2 people didn't finish, you then have to start to question whether they've been given enough time.
Yeah.
Because you could always accept that there's 1 or 2 people that are not as good as the others who perhaps haven't used an overlocker before and struggled with things like that. But when, you know, like last week, 12 people didn't finish that first challenge. And then even this week, you know, we had 4 or 5, maybe 6 people that still didn't finish that fleece challenge. So you then have to start to say, well, how is it the right amount of time? And there's a lot of debate. I didn't see too much of it going on in our comments, but I follow a couple of other message boards, and there was a lot of debate going on about whether this is supposed to be an entertainment program or a competition program or an educational program. And I know we've talked about that before, saying, you know, we'd like to be shown what to do in a little bit more detail, or, you know, we love it when they have the historical bits in there.
Yeah.
Then a lot of people have come out and said, well, but it's a competition program And, if they've got 3 hours or 3.5 hours or whatever it was, they should get cracking and do it. And I suppose that's the debate. I suppose if you've watched it since series 10, then you probably want to hark back to those series 1, 2, and 3, where it was a little bit more of what we're talking about. Whereas now it is very much more, that kind of sensationalist.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about it later. Bad editing to just try and whip up a bit of a frenzy. Really.
And excuse me. I think as well, maybe we're just getting tired of seeing basic sewing. I want the sewers to be able to achieve. So give them more time, give them 5 hours so we can see some spectacular garments and lots of spectacular garments. And let's see some finished sewing. And even if you give them 5 hours, like we with our teaching days, doesn't matter how many hours you give students, you'll still have a finished set of results across a grade range. So even if you gave the sewers 5 hours, you'll probably get loads of finished garments. But actually, you can then hone in even more on the detail with the judging and going, this came first because of this top stitching, this came second. And I think it will just make it even more exciting for us because we'll get to see more finished garments, more spectacular sewing, more talent being celebrated, and it will be exciting, won't it?
Yes. I mean, whether 5 hours is the right amount of time, I think based on what happened last week and what happened this week, even an extra half an hour, because I appreciate they film the first 2 tasks on the same day. So if you're saying it's 3.5 hours or 3 hours plus the 90 minutes,
it's a long day
for the actual sewing time, and then you've got to factor in that they'll be filming pickups and there'll be lunch and they'll have a break and everything like that. But I don't feel it's unreasonable to say that they couldn't perhaps have 4 hours for the first one and an hour and a half for the second one. I mean, you're never going to get me to agree on the second one at all, because I think it's a waste of time, whatever they do. If that's the rule for it's always been 90 minutes for that one.
Yeah.
Then I don't think that 5.5 hours filming, working is too much, because you'd expect an 8-hour day, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I just think we'd enjoy it more, or we'd be like, oh my God, who's going to win this? Because you get to see more skills, and then the judging is going to have to be even more critical, and so forth. But there we are. That's an ongoing debate, I know, with many people of the sewing bee. Here's another message.
Oh.
Esme is right about the 2-piece. This is from Karen from Wigan. If you are making a 2-piece, then both colours need to be in both items. Once again, I agree with Ting. Well, thanks for that, Karen.
Well done, Karen. The money's in the post. Although whether it'll get there with Royal Mail these days, who knows?
Jay says, loved your commentary, but missing the pen. Don't you worry.
Oh, I thought you'd lost the pen.
No, it's here. It's there we go. The pen is back. But to be fair, I can really only use the pen when we get further down with, say, 7 or 8 sewers, when we can go into a bit more detail. It's very difficult on these first 2 weeks when we still have the backstories, because we did that for this episode, didn't we? I had 6 more sewers to look at. And then finally, which leads us nicely on to the next bit. Everbee, good to see you back. Always there in the comments every year. I have a query about machine needle size. Could it have been a factor during the show? And would using denim needles or a larger needle make top stitching easier? I completely agree, because I think they had to do top stitching. Some were sewing the panels of the denim skirt together, one panel, then top stitching it, then sewing the next panel, then top stitching it. So you'd have to keep changing your thread. And was it Marcus it was Neil that said he's going to sew all the panels together and then do the top stitching at the end? Because yes, you would need a different needle ideally. Certainly from the denim, because the top stitch has thicker thread. So therefore you need a better needle for that. And now I know many of you don't realise this, but sewing machine needles can actually now be really specific. And I've done loads of videos on my channel about sewing machine needles. So it's a plug to watch some of my videos. I'm going to put them all in the description below. But I've done a specific one on jeans, needle or denim, and then top stitching, the universal one, the ballpoint and so forth. But the top stitch needle actually is a really underrated needle, and I use it a lot. In fact, I nearly use it all the time in my general sewing because it simply has a much bigger eye. So if you don't have a fancy threader, you can thread the machine easily with your own eyes, or as Ting with his glasses.
I have a threader. I'm not.
Oh, do you? But it's so good. And so I use that anyway. But when you've got thicker thread in, yes, you need a better needle for it to work without breaking or getting snagged or whatnot. So actually, buy better specific needles. So I'm just going to show you this quick little video that I've done on top stitching, and then in the list below there are loads more. You might find this quite useful. The top stitching needle, and I have to say this is my favourite needle, and is the one I use an awful lot of the time, in fact nearly most of the time. It has an extra large eye which accommodates thick top stitching thread. Extra sharp point too, which allows the needle to penetrate through all the fabrics, like you would do when top stitching or even when quilting. There we are. See, Ting, learn something?
Well, I knew there was plenty of needles, but maybe we've stumbled onto the issue with last week's show. Maybe some were changing their needles and it took too long, or maybe they weren't and it was ripping up material and thread, which then would take up time as well. So there is a question over, what do we see and what don't we see, and what is going on and what isn't going on, and how frustrating that could be.
Indeed, because we don't know if they get given these needles. We don't know if they get given all the extra stuff, whether they tell them to use them or whether they're just there and they're only used if the sewer knows what to use, if you see what I mean. So, yes, but needles can have a massive, massive impact. And as I always say, they're tuppence halfpenny. I think from a pack of 6, they're for £2, they work out about 30p each. Change your needle for every project. Definitely. Push the boat out, Ting. Change your needle.
This is where I tell you that I've only changed my needle probably about 4 times in about 10 years.
Lord! Oh, swiftly moving on. Right. Who have we got left? So our first week, we lost Neil. So you don't have to see...
You just left the show.
You don't have to see the puppet anymore. I was a bit sad about that because I thought he might have started turning into a fun one to watch. Partly because did I write the quote down? He said a funny quote. Oh, I did write it down, but now I can't find it. It's typical, isn't it? He took the mick out of the transformation challenge, didn't he? Saying, "Oh, they'll probably give me something to make a swimming pool out of, or no, give me a swimming pool to make a garment out of." I thought that was quite witty. That's probably why he's gone. As I say, it's still early days yet. We don't fully know the sewers. We've got 6 more backstories to watch, and that's what happened during this episode. So we got to find out a little bit more about Comfort, Janet, actually, who might be growing to be one of my favourites with her hula hooping.
Don't start.
Oh. I won't ask you yet. Don't worry. I won't ask you.
No, I wasn't asking me. It's just like you latch on to someone who's clearly not.
So maybe I'll have to start hula hooping. We'll see. So that's who we've got left. So another 11 sewers and 6 more backstories to look through. So we'll whip through onto the pattern challenge. As I say, as it's early days, we'll look at 3 or 4 of them. But as we go through and lose a few more sewers, gives us a bit more time to go through them all in detail. But for the moment, we'll just generally talk about them. So the half zip fleece. What did you think of that, Ting, when you saw that as a challenge?
Well, yes, but then, harking back to what we've just said about timings, I mean, I think they said there was 10 pieces, and, whether you decided to use one fabric, I don't think anyone used one fabric, but, like 2 fabrics, or, Marcus ended up pinching a bit of everyone's and had 10 completely different, you still had to cut out 10 pieces and put them all together. And again, they had just over 3 hours to do it, which is why I was then like, well, maybe it is a timing issue here.
Oh, it would have taken at least half hour, 45 minutes to cut the pattern pieces, the fabric out alone, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So they had to make this. The judges said at the beginning, we want you to play with the colours. So that clearly was going to be on their assessment criteria. And Patrick said, we want to give us a vibrant combinations. And it's fleeced backed cotton sweatshirt. Now, I don't know much about this, but when you look at the other side, you can see it's fleece backed, this white stuff. I've never used that before. I don't know how different that is to normal fleece. Does it make it easier to sew?
I have to be honest and say I don't know either. I would have thought it was, whatever it was fairly bulky, to bring the two raw edges together, because fleece is thicker anyway, isn't it? But
absolutely. Yeah. If you know, drop it in the comments. I would think it just means when you cut it, maybe it doesn't, I don't know, fray so much or fluff because of this backing on it. But let us know. So let's go through. What made me, I did laugh though. Where is this on the picture? This was their example. Now, of a certain age, Ting, I think you're in this gang as well. I just saw that and thought, man at C&A. I had a ski jacket like that. And I was so adamant that I just Googled C&A men's and look what came up.
Isn't that more of a shell suit, though?
It was the shell. It was the early ski jacket. But it was just those colours and the style of it. I thought, yeah, that's definitely man at C&A, isn't it? But we got those two zips, and we knew the pocket was probably going to cause issues. They were looking at having those. Go on, Ting.
This goes back to the timing thing, doesn't it? Because if you take the pocket out of the equation, that saves you half an hour at least in terms of cutting it out, ironing on the interfacing, placing the zip, and then top sewing it onto the bit that all of that had to be done first. So, you take the zip out and just had it as a zip, half zip top without the pocket, then maybe you would have got some finished articles.
Yeah. So there we go. They are the finished articles. Well, some were finished. Some weren't. Some had hems or cuffs missing too. But the colours look good. And Esme did say, it's important that the colours they chose. So we knew when they were going to be judged that they were going to be talking about the colours. Now, we had this debate and we had some great conversations about the colour. So, yes, I can understand now, because they said it in the criteria, that the colour is going to be a part. Even though it's a sewing show and you want to look at the sewing, the colour is going to be judged here. Did you think the colours were good? Did you like those colours?
Like we said last week, it is a sewing show, but you don't just go and buy a piece of white cotton and make yourself a summer dress. You take the time to choose the floral pattern or the stripe pattern or whatever you want. So it's the same here, I mean, I'm looking at some of them, but you want the colours to actually sit quite well together. So we had the one that was the pink and the purple, which was your new best mate. That went quite well. And was it Luke who chose ultimately he was saying it's the pink and the blue and the white from the trans flag, but they go together. Those colours go together. I mean, we had an absolute blinder from Ailsa who decided she was making a Sainsbury's uniform, but we know that orange and that kind of purpley colour go together because we see it in Sainsbury's if you want to go shopping. I think they've just hired Ailsa to do their new costumes. But, there were other things, I mean, like looking at comforts there, where we've got a blue bottom, a purple pocket, an orange top and a black sleeve. I mean, there's no way I would go into a shop and buy something with that. And as much as Marcus, and there's a big debate over whether he should have won or not, I'm sure we'll have, but he just went and chose, I like the idea that he went and chose the 10 colours from the other contestants.
Yeah.
But the colours didn't look particularly great together. I wouldn't want to go out in it. I like the concept, but it, I don't know.
Well, let's take a look at some of them close up. Let's go to... Susie, I thought this was a great colour because teal and pink go so well together, don't they? Or turquoise and pink.
I'm going to say that's not teal, but yeah. No, yeah, that they go together. I'm not sure about the black, but
No.
That went together there. Okay.
And then we've
stitching line there across the middle. That's the trouble when you use black.
It's
you can see how it's bubbled along.
Yeah. And they did say about the zip being on the wonk. They wanted them horizontally, didn't they? And that's sort of out. We then have Don's.
But then Don's used all the same colour apart from the cuff. I mean, I know the pocket's different, but the collar, sorry. And when you've got 10 pieces, you could have argued that the whole of that front could have been cut out in one piece.
Oh, indeed, yes.
You know what I mean? The idea was to have those different... Even if it was a slightly different shade blue, or if you'd have put a bit more of... Is that I can't see on this? Is it red or orange? But it needed something else to go across the bottom or the sleeves, because that's where colour is important.
Well, even though they said it at the beginning, we want you to play with colours. When you're looking at the pattern and you see you've got all these pieces, that is the clue. If we've got all these pieces, we need to be cutting lots of different colour fabric out. Otherwise, you would have less pieces, wouldn't you? So that's where the pattern should have helped them go, I need to cut more colour out. We've then got Alex. And now, I liked Alex's front, but let's come back to this back, which reminded me of, where is it? The early BBC Breakfast logo. But if you've got 3 hours to make that, and she's had time to put the sun on there, well, you could argue actually there was enough time.
There is an argument that, that if she had enough time to make that and put that on the back, then there was enough time to do the challenge. So then there is a bigger question over, well, clearly 3 and a bit hours was plenty of time. But it wasn't as if that was 100% completely well made, although it's looking fairly good. But
I thought it looked
ruined
great.
it by putting that thing on the
I
back.
think so.
That was just ridiculous.
I think it pushed it right down in the order of where she came, which I thought was a shame there.
You appliqued, I think it was cotton, on the top of this fleece, which is stretchy. Oh. And so again, everything just seized up and bubbled up, and then it just ruined the shape, and it dragged the bottom up a bit. It was a silly thing to do, to put that on the back. I would have made sure that everything was done perfectly. Yeah. And then you could have won. Do you know what I mean?
Do you think she actually finished with half an hour to go and then went, "Oh, I'm going to decorate it and put this sun on"?
I don't know, and you don't know whether anyone has said, "Oh, well, you've got the time."
Let's also not forget, Alex did say she'd made loads of fleece. She's from, wasn't it the Peak District? And she'd got that picture of all her family in them. So she could have just gone,
so there's
bish,
an
bash,
element
bosh.
of experience there, yes. She's probably worked with that material before, where the others probably haven't. But that doesn't mean you then go off. It is a pattern challenge, and the pattern did not have Frank Boff's bloody sunshine.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, and then the one that everyone's talking about is Marcus's. So the editing was good here, wasn't it? Right from the beginning, he looked stressed. He looked so he had sweat coming down his brow.
Well, and he declared he wasn't going to do the pocket, you know. And it made me laugh because he was like, "Oh, I've had to cut out all these bits." It's like, well, so's everyone else, Marcus. It's not like you've got a 2-piece one and everyone else has only got a 3-piece.
And so they really edited it to make him look he was struggling and going to get behind. And to the point where when Kiel blew the whistle, he had to blow it twice and go right up to him because he was still sewing. He was still doing the hem, which he didn't finish. Well, there it is. So you can see it.
Isn't it? You can even see it on this picture here. Where's your pen?
Oh, yeah.
You can see that the front half is done, but then it drops at the back. And it was on the overlocker or whatever they were using, when the whistle went. So he had to take it out unfinished. And yet, dun dun dun, he won.
He won. Yeah, and Susie didn't finish at some point. Don was a bit wonky. Comfort didn't finish, and this got praise, glory. But this is where I come back to you. The criteria at the beginning was play with the colours and have vibrant colour choices. It seemed like there was nothing else on their criteria.
Well, yes, but then, it is a sewing competition, isn't it? They were talking about whether the zip had lined up here and whether their collar was, whether the top sewing, the under sewing, stitching in a ditch. So it was a sewing challenge, and he didn't finish. So in terms of the series getting underway, you can have your first slipper for that one, because it was absolutely ridiculous to then say that he'd won it purely based on the colour. If it was purely based on the colour, then don't talk about anyone else's stitching. Just look at everyone's colour combination, because he didn't finish. It was on the machine, in the machine, and he didn't finish. So, you've got to make it clearer what you're actually doing.
And we've said this before, haven't we? If you're on that show, you need to put in finished garments. Doesn't matter if they're, good or not. You need to finish it, don't you?
Not to be too disparaging against anyone else, but I couldn't believe, and I'm really sorry, I couldn't believe that Don wasn't at the bottom. He was like in the middle. There were people below Don, and I didn't think that Don had done particularly well. He hadn't played with colour. He'd just got the different thing round there. And his sewing wasn't finished, and yet he was halfway up the leaderboard. There were people lower than him.
Yeah.
And so I feel that the judging on this one, which is where the slipper has come in, is so inconsistent that how are we, the audience, supposed to go, oh, okay, we've said this before. You're watching Bake Off and the cake has sunk in the middle. We know that one's rubbish. But, here we're relying on them going, oh, the top stitch is understitched. It's not straight. It's not there. And we can see all of that. And then we're told, oh, no, hang on, but that one's actually sixth.
That's right. It's infuriating.
Yeah.
It just left me a bit when he won, because I was like, hang on, we've just watched the last 10 minutes of you editing it to make him look like he was going to be rock bottom.
I mean, nothing against Marcus, because again, the idea of using the 10 different fabrics and everything, we've said about that.
Yeah, clever.
That was a good, clever idea.
Yeah.
But then we were led down the path, and I know, this goes back to what I said at the start. It's clearly edited to be this kind of competition, but it's also, we're not stupid, to then turn around and say, oh, he got told off by the judges because he said he wasn't going to do the pocket. Then he was complaining he didn't have enough time. Then he was actually still on the sewing machine when the whistle went. We had all of that edited in for him then to win. Yeah.
Let's also not forget Georgie's, which was I don't think I showed that one, did I? Where's she on there?
Oh God,
first, second, third. I think she's
third one in, isn't it?
That one. Oh God, my pen's all over the place. That one there.
Yeah,
first,
a bit
second.
More practice with the pen, don't we?
I know. Let's do that. She came second because they loved the colour. It was that pop of orange that Esme liked, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But can you remember the zip gate? Yeah. The zip was upside down.
Yeah.
Because again, she jokingly said she's from the Isle of Wight.
But it was a pattern challenge, and the pattern said the zip should be up the other way.
Yeah. So you think, oh wow, but that's where it clearly says they were just looking at colour, or colour took a much stronger preference that round.
I don't think you can say about the judging on this one, because it was so inconsistent. They were tearing apart some sewers for not matching up the colours at the collar. They were tearing them up for doing the understitching on the top.
Yeah, well, that was Comfort.
They were tearing them up for all of this.
Comfort and Janet.
And then they go and give it to someone who had an unfinished garment.
Yeah.
But simply because they had this idea that they were going to use some from every person.
Yeah.
Which he didn't have to do, because they only had a limited colour palette. So he could have gone over there and just taken 10 colours out of there, because they're all on everyone's in one shape or form. So that was just, a waste of time by him declaring that that's what he's going to do. He could have just gone, well, I'm just going to take a bit off every single one. Because it's not like there were hundreds of colours there.
No, totally agree. Yeah. So therefore, that whole sort of running order, where they've come first to 11th is a bit odd because it's on one criteria or another criterion, and it just didn't sit right. No.
So, and we've said this before, this is not directed at the sowers. This is the judging and the editing of this. We could sit here and say, well, actually, maybe someone else should have won, or maybe someone else should have been at the bottom. But we weren't there. We can't see the actual nitty-gritty of it. We can only see what's presented to us, and we're presented with one thing, and then the judges use completely different criteria to award that running order, which you then assume feeds into the rest of the show, because it's not very often that you'd have someone who perhaps wins this challenge and wins the next challenge, and then is sent home.
No.
So, not that Marcus is automatically safe, but you are then on this kind of, oh, well, he's done quite well. He'll have to do really badly if they're going to send him home because he won this one.
Yeah.
Well, in reality, he didn't finish the garment.
Let's move on to the transformation challenge. Cricket whites had some beautiful cricket whites on show, and
they were beautiful cricket whites.
They were. I'd love those V-neck tops. And the idea of this round was they had these cricket whites and all their added gear, like the cricket pads and helmet and things. But the idea of this round was from Central St Martin's, where the first years have to make a garment out of white. Apparently that's what they do, the first years. And they make them look visionary, and they're sculptural and architectural. Well, I'm not surprised. It's because those students probably had a term to make it. But they wanted our sowers to make it in 90 minutes. They wanted an avant-garde, which is a term in itself. How do you deconstruct that? And something visionary, Esme said. That's what we want you to do. And Patrick then added on this idea of the sculptural design. But it also needs to be a top and bottom. That was quite clear in the beginning, a top and bottom. So we go to Marcus. Bless him. Sorry, Marcus. We feel like we've picked on you today. Where's the picture? Because that was just a giggle, really, for 90 minutes.
I think that's the issue, isn't it? If that's all you can do in 90 minutes,
Did he just miss the bits where they said top and bottom? Did they add the top and bottom on a bit later? But that's look
around the room and go, oh, hang on a minute. Everyone's got a fully dressed mannequin here, and I've asked for a head mannequin.
Yeah, and done a hat, a balaclava, a bunny balaclava.
I get what he was trying to do, because this whole... And this is where you could argue with me until the cows come home over this, because avant-garde is essentially something that goes against the common sense and common approval of things. Okay. So it's not supposed to be a nice, pretty skirt or a nice, pretty shirt. It is supposed to be artistic and goes against the common accepted things. So this is totally avant-garde, because it having the you would have that on the model, and obviously all you would be able to see is their eyes. It is sculptural. It is, I suppose, you would argue it's avant-garde, because I would sit here and go, it's utterly ridiculous. So therefore, anything that I say is utterly ridiculous is probably avant-garde, because it's going against the grain.
Yeah.
Which I think they all did do that, even if they didn't quite understand what avant-garde was. But it was the whole concept of using these lovely cricket whites. I hate this challenge.
Yeah.
But they weren't even old. They were brand new.
They were. They were Daz white.
They were, and they were new. And we've said before, even when the transformation challenge is a bit quirky, the whole idea would be that you've got something that maybe is kind of got a bit of a rip in it, or maybe is not doing what it should do in its current. So maybe you've got a skirt that's now not really working, so you're going to turn it into a shirt or something like that. Whereas this was just ripping up all of the and an utter waste of material. And I know it's a program, and I know it's a competition, and I know ultimately, if you and I were to go and buy those in a shop, we would have bought them and used them properly. And these have been bought and cut up and done as so for a TV competition. Everyone's been paid. No one's been exploited here. But I just feel that these type of transformation challenges don't fit in when they'll want us to sit here in a couple of weeks' time talking about reduce, reuse, and recycle. Because you have utterly ruined brand new. If they'd have gone and said we've been to Lord's and we've got all this old equipment and they were all grubby and everything,
that would be a story.
I'd have been absolutely fine with that.
Absolutely.
They're done.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have wanted a sweaty box as a shoulder thing, but but the other stuff, you'd go, that's fine. But it was the whole kind of idea that these were pristine.
Yeah.
Why not just give them a bolt of white fabric and some boning and go do your worst, rather than taking stuff that is perfectly usable.
Well, it fits in with the sports week there, I suppose, doesn't it? Did you have a favourite there, looking at that lineup?
I did like the triangle, the blue triangle.
Yeah,
in the middle,
Pasha's one, I think. Yeah,
where she had the kind of faux Elizabethan kind of collar on it. I thought that was quite good. I also thought the third one in, the kind of shorter skirt with the little ripped bits off there.
Yeah.
She hadn't done very well in concealing. There's a lot of tape would be needed on the top, but I like the skirt and the idea of that. The others, I felt some of them were a bit more mundane, but that would come down to perhaps not understanding the avant-garde side of it.
Well, that third one in was Susie's, and there you go. I think that looks lovely from that angle, doesn't it?
Oh, no, that is the one. There was the other one who did it where it didn't quite cover the cleavage.
Oh, yeah.
But no, this one, yes, because you had the different panels.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with the cable knit going down. Oh,
I
lovely.
That was really inspired to do something like that.
This was Pasha's that you liked, with the height, the pads being cut for the collar, and then your tummy button on show there. The whole.
I would have quite liked, and I suppose it depended. I suppose they really only had one jumper with that on, but that blue. Obviously, you've got the triangle in the middle, but the asymmetric blue line along the bottom there. I would have quite liked that if that had curled round, keep going up and curl round the back.
Oh yeah, sort of like that and up to the top. Yeah.
I imagine there wasn't enough there to do that with.
Janet's, which I liked, where she used the knit as a boob tube.
Yeah. I just didn't feel it was.
No.
I felt it still looked quite conventional.
Yes, when you go back to that criteria, yes, it's traditional, isn't it? It's what you would expect from a top and a bottom dress, I suppose.
But, again, they've got 90 minutes to come up with a design and put it together. And if you don't know what avant-garde is, you're just going to go, well, I'm going to cut all this up and sew it all together and see what it comes out like, without really thinking about whether it's avant-garde
Indeed. You're under pressure, you've got the cameras on, you've actually forgotten avant-garde. I think it would be different if it was written down and you were handed the brief on a piece of paper. You could be reminded of it. But if they've just told you, you're probably not even listening to them anyway. You're probably too busy thinking in your head, right, they're talking, what am I going to do, what am I going to do? I know I would be. I would what did they say? Avant-garde? That's long gone. Two more to look at briefly. Alex's one.
Yeah, I did quite like this one. It wasn't massively so, but it had a bit more of a sculptural.
It was that bottom half, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes, the top not so much, but the bottom certainly.
And lastly, Ailsa's, which had those. She ripped some of the jumpers up so much that you had the locks of the knitting that were safety pinned on. It's maybe in a costume in a film that would look like from here, wouldn't it? It was kind of catwalky as well, wasn't it?
And it made me feel that the only avant-garde bit of it was because she'd pinned those things on.
Yeah.
If you look at kind of the shape and that, especially when I haven't got my reading glasses on at this point, but if you're looking at that, it is very conventional type shape, and then it only seemed to be jazzed up by pinning those on. which then
Well,
makes it slightly more unconventional.
this is Elsa. She was actually second, and Alex was the one that won this one, came first. And then right back down the other end, we had Comfort again. And then, of course, dear old Marcus with... let's take one more look at it before we finish. Oh, no, that's Pasha. Where's Marcus? There. So he's gone from being first for the pattern challenge and just what you were saying. Now rock bottom for transformation.
I don't know, again, because I perhaps wasn't listening as closely. I don't know whether it had to be an outfit for a woman, because I think he could have got away with saying, if you were to put this on a male model, you could put that on as the top, then you'd be stripped to the waist. And so if he'd have then done something on the bottom...
Yes. Yeah.
You know, he could have perhaps got away with it by saying, well, actually, the model would be bare-chested, and you've got the top, which is the head that's covered, and then you've got these short type things or whatever he was going to make. The fact that he made no attempt to do anything other than that, he absolutely deserved to be in the bottom for that.
Or he could have, which we've had in previous years, he's been misunderstood. He actually has been so avant-garde that another judge could have just given it, that's so brave. That's completely... It's completely not what's expected on the sewing bee. So then come top.
I know it's post 9 o'clock on BBC, but if you were to put that on a male model who walked down the catwalk wearing only that, I feel it would have been taken off the air. You know, there is an element of, he may have gone to the extreme, but they did say a top and a bottom. Even if he'd have turned the cup into some form of jockstrap or G-string, he could have perhaps got away with it by saying, being really avant-garde.
Absolutely.
You could have gone that far.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into the made to measure then. And the made to measure, they had some sport week, don't forget, and because it's Olympics in Paris this year, make a kit that could be worn on the world stage. They could choose any sport, but whatever they then chose, it then had to represent a country of their choice. And I was looking forward to this when I heard that as a challenge. Thought, we're gonna see a variety of things. But actually, I don't know whether we did in the end.
No, they were all much of a theme, weren't they?
Yeah.
I did like your comment last night. I think I would have been with you. This is a made-to-measure challenge, so it has to fit. So I think to make my life as easy as possible, I would have made a pair of Speedos and a dressing gown, and then that would have fit no matter who you put it on.
Absolutely.
Because the divers do that, don't they? They have their Speedos on, and then they have their like little, I call them a dressing gown, but it won't be. You know, you could have made something like that. That'd have been nice and easy to make. You could have done that in no time.
Yeah, and even Kiel said it. The presenter said straight away, just make some Speedos. But you've trumped him by, you're not going to take the mick out of the 4.5 hours. You'll do the Speedos in 2 and then just chill and make a nice, loose, simple dressing gown. So actually, that would have been a really good look. What type of fabric would you have used for the dressing gown?
Oh, you'd have to use that. I don't know what it's called, but you know, like you get that like toweling material that soaks up all the water. Oh. It's not toweling. It's that one where you can sometimes get to take the sweat off, don't you? It just absorbs everying.
Oh,
and it's like a microfibery type cloth. And I'd use something like
chamois
leather.
There was me going. I was thinking more a bit, sexy and have something semi-sheer, not actually usable.
Strutting around in their Speedo, they don't want to be. They want to be covered up.
If you had any ideas of what you were going to make that were different to any of the Sewers Nars, drop them in the comments. Let us know what your idea would have been for 4.5 hours. But yes, Speedos would have been the one. You could have had but you could have had a really clever.
Would have been that. Would have, I think Speedos is one of the easiest. But what else would have been perhaps easy when you're thinking of the Olympic costumes?
Oh, I've got my thinking cap on now. But you could do a really. I'm sure they'll tell us. You could do a really complicated Speedo with different, fabrics in it, but so you could have made it harder. But anyway,
get off the Speedos.
Yeah, sorry. So let's choose Marcus. Just because, sorry, Marcus, we have chosen you for all 2 pieces, but I just giggled at the GB because I would have just thought that the letters would have been the other way, wouldn't you think, Ting?
I think, I said to you last night, didn't I,
Yeah,
that he's representing BG instead of G. I mean, I can see what he's
of
done, but to
course. Yeah,
me, the G should have been on the top and the B should have fallen,
yeah,
or the B should have been further over, which it couldn't be further over because of the blue panel, but
yeah.
it should have looked more like the G had fallen down. I just don't know. I mean, I'll get everything thrown at me in the comments, I'm sure, but I took one look at that and I was like, not Team GB there. Bulgaria, perhaps? I don't know.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah,
just kind of like I would have done them the other way around, but that's just me.
yeah. Or I would have done a little bit smaller and a bit more stylish, like most tops, But that would have
Yeah.
been small. At least this was obvious.
But apart from that, it's made very
Love it.
well.
Yeah,
It fits the model very well.
yeah.
He'd done the little
Chalk bag.
bag. It
Yeah,
was a climbing one, wasn't it?
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Speed
he'd done
climbing. Yeah,
the chalk bag to go with it. So I think from a sewing made to measure challenge,
yeah,
he'd fitted his model well. It was just the GB bit. I was
yeah.
just like, oh, Marcus.
Because this is also clever because you don't want it to fit like a rugby shirt. You actually want some looseness there because he's got to climb, hasn't he? So it
Well,
needs to
I
be
don't know,
looser.
I didn't see it. It was in the Olympics the first time, wasn't it? In Japan, in Tokyo, last time round, and I
Yeah.
only saw a couple of bits of it. But I don't know whether it's better to have something that's skin tight, lycra,
That does
because
move.
you don't want it flapping around, getting caught
Yeah.
in all your ropes, do you?
Yes, good point. I like the drawings for this round because we can see the concept to creation. So that was the concept, and it did turn out a treat there. So.
I don't want to ruin your bubble, but like
Go
the
on.
Bake Off, they do the drawings after it, so they know what it looks like.
Oh,
Do you really think that they knew that's exactly what it was going to look like?
oh,
They always do the drawings after. It's post-production,
right.
the drawings.
Okay, scrap that whole idea then. I thought that was really nice. I thought we could compare concept to creation like they do with Vicky
the
Gill.
concept is there because they
Yeah.
have their plan of what it's going to
Yeah.
look like. But in terms of the show, they draw it once it's actually been made.
But I'd like that top, Marcus. I love this design. It shows off the pecs and it's slimming as well because you ignore the white. So he looks really slim, doesn't he?
Well, he is really slim.
Well, he
Certainly
is.
slimmer than me.
Yeah, and I like his pumps and his white socks too.
Right, moving on.
Okay, let's move on to Lauren. There we go, Lauren. So Lauren was doing a gymnast, which we know because I love watching the gymnastic. I can't wait for the Olympics canoeing. I love watching the swimming for the first 2 weeks.
It'll be quite nice as well because it's Paris, so it's our time zone. So, you will actually be able to watch it. Although, being a teacher during the school holidays, it's quite nice. Like I remember when it was in Australia, that waking up in the morning and just lying in bed and watching everything that happened overnight, and then you could get on with the rest of your day. You're not really worried about it.
It's true. And Lauren was obviously doing the Jamaican flag. Was it nice to see some glitz? I thought she'd obviously dealt with it very well. You could argue, is there a bit of excess there too? Is the fit quite there?
I think that, this is the issue. This is a made to measure, and you've got the model sat right there next to you. So when there is a little bit too much excess, there is a question of like, why was that not taken out? Why was it not put on and gone, oh, I need to take some of that out? I know a lot of that will be a time issue because, of course, if you've sewn it together and then they put it on and then you go, oh, hang on, there's too much in the back, you've got to make a decision of, do you just unpick it all and start again? Or if you're already 3.5 hours in, that might not be feasible for you to do. But at the same time, it is a made to measure. You should have, what is it they always say? Measure twice and cut once. They should have got all of that as right as possible before they even sewn it all together, especially with something like this, which is, it's a leotard. It's fitted, isn't it?
But doesn't it look good? Great design, those sort of swooping elements. I think they did comment on that.
Yeah, I love the way the colour placement, because it wasn't just a 3 block of colour.
Yeah.
Although, wasn't this the one where the lassie came out of the bum?
Oh, it was. Yes. But Lauren, we loved it. Well done there. And it's just great to see some glam. And working with that fabric must have been a nightmare. So, great one there. And let's see, Georgie. Georgie's was the track kit from Trinidad and Tobago. This, I thought, was very clever because it was very stylish, very modern, using the different netting there and the fabrics. I loved it.
I love the concept of it. I worried that it was... You know what I'm like with things around my neck?
Yeah.
I'm worried that darker red, that seemed to cut into the model's neck a bit. So I don't know if that whole panel could have shifted a little bit the other way.
What, that bit here?
Because that red bit seems like... I mean, it's not too bad there, but when they'd stopped in front of Patrick, it had come even closer in. And I just think if you were performing, you wouldn't want to do like a forward roll and it's kind of right across your neck.
I didn't know what... It said track kit. I presumed it was someone doing track event, 100 metres, 200.
Well, you don't want to be doing the hurdles and the same thing happen.
Yeah. But the design, I thought was...
I loved it, yeah.
Refreshing.
I just think it needed to come over a little bit more, that top bit.
Yes, yeah.
Just for practicality reasons, really, more than anything else.
And then we've got Alex, which caused an interesting debate, didn't it? Because it was like, and I think Patrick actually said that. Is it half athletic and half, on a boat in Cambridge in a hot summer's afternoon?
I think this is the issue. And, we talked about colour and how important it is with colour. But it's also important that you know your fabrics. Now, before she even started, I think she was one of the first ones they went to. And they said, what's your design? And she said, we're doing a seersucker on the shorts. And as soon as she said it, I went, no. Because it is going to look... And then I think even she said halfway through the sew, they look like beach shorts. Well, they will do because you've used seersucker, which looks exactly like that. It
is synonymous with that, yes.
Yes. And not just modern, actually, we're quite old, like 1920s, when men were in a full bathing suit, Just and then the whole thing with it being Team GB, but you only had a little bit of red cord that you can't even see. If you hadn't said that, you'd have gone with Greece, wouldn't you? With just the blue and the white.
Or Scotland, yes, but she obviously did want it more Scotland than
compete in the Olympics. It's under Team GB.
Team GB, of course, but she wanted it more. I know she wanted it more Scotland anyway. But yes, you're right. It's another team. Yes, you'd think national flag would be Greece. I do love those shorts, though. I want them. The top, great fit of the top. I'd like that at the gym, please, too. So, yes.
It was a good sew.
Yeah.
But, we talked about having the choice of colour. Well, this is also about choosing the right fabric. You go running. I don't even run for a bus. But, you go running. And you wouldn't want to go running in seersucker shorts.
No.
You want that kind of breathable fabric.
Yeah.
And given that she'd done it for the top, it should have been better off doing, like, the shorts in red with a similar material she'd used for the top.
I'd like to sit under a tree with one knee up in my seersucker shorts on a hot summer's afternoon with a bit of hay in my mouth.
After you've just been punting down in Cambridge.
Absolutely. Right, garment of the week then, Ting. Do you have one garment of the week before we go on to the actual one? One that you thought if you were going to give it to anyone, was there anything there that stood out to you?
Unfortunately not, no.
No? Okay, it's okay. Well, garment of the week was Georgie with that design. I can understand why they gave it to her. The colour, the design of it was something new and refreshing and brave as well with the fabric.
Yes. Like I said, I like the design. I like the mesh fabric. I like that. I just felt that it just needed to be tucked and thrown a little bit further across just to give that neck a bit of freedom.
And who went home? We got an idea that Marcus and Comfort were at the bottom, but we had to say Sadly, goodbye to comfort. I was a bit gutted there because after last week and seeing what she made, I was like, yes, this could be one for me. You know, where you get your favourites and you start wanting them to go on and on and on. And I'm like, damn. I was just starting to get a favourite there.
But this is, again, where it kind of comes down to what are we actually judging here? Because, you know, her sewing wasn't that bad, but she made, you know, I didn't like the colours in the first one. And in the last one, it just was a bit baggy in places and didn't quite fit properly. And it's a made-to-measure challenge. And it was just kind of like, I don't know whether she was that bad. I do feel that maybe there was a couple of other people there who were in more contention than perhaps she was.
If you lost one of your favourites, was comfort your favourite? Let us know in the comments. If you're starting to get a favourite, also let us know, because we've seen all the sewers now. We've had all the backstories. We've got 10 left. This is where it starts to go into a bit more detail. So I can't wait. Let's have a look at the slipper count. One slipper.
I mean, I mean, there could have been more in there, I suppose. It was definitely one, though.
I think you know when you've thrown it. You normally say there's a slipper. I don't think there was anything where I forgot to put it up.
It's not fair to throw the slipper at the transformation challenge, because otherwise we'd be starting on about 3 slippers every week, because you know I hate that.
Oh dear. It's starting to get a bit more exciting now. I did feel a little bit flat again. It's like, I want to see more sewing. Come on, I want to see more of it. But obviously that's because we've got 12 sewers and now we've got down to 10. That will start to come through, won't it, over the next 3 or 4 weeks?
Hopefully, but I think, you know, harking back to where we started this evening, I think it still would be nice to see a challenge where there was good sewing. Not necessarily from all 10. I don't think we're ever going to get that. But I'm still yet to think, there's those 1 or 2 people, you know, both weeks who have done something phenomenal that you go, I need to keep an eye on them. It's still very open, which on the one hand is good, but then it also gives me no reason to tune in next week. Cause I don't
it.
You know,
Agree.
I mean, I've already started to think maybe Pasha, maybe Susie have got some skills there, but I've not seen anything that makes me go, I really want to see what Pasha does next week, or I really want to see what Susie does next week. Because it's still too variable. Because are they not giving them enough time? Is it too complicated? You know, even that other one where they were saying having to work with that machine that most of them hadn't used before. Well, you need to give them an extra 45 minutes for that. You can't expect someone to pick up and understand how to use a machine they've never used before. So, you know, it is still very much what they're
It's a good point. Yeah. Because you think a couple of seasons ago we had the likes of Ralph already, or Lizzie from a couple of years ago. We started to get our favourites.
Even last year, I mean, right from week 1, Asma was knocking it out of the park. And we were a bit wary because she was so good in week 1 and week 2 that we were kind of like, well, obviously she's probably going to win this. But then the judging always kept spinning around. And, I mean, on the one hand, it kind of led a bit of jeopardy because you did think, well, is she going to go out? And ultimately she made it to the end. But because the judging was out, and you had I can't remember the name of your favourite last year, but then she went out in week 4 after doing 3 good weeks. And it went out. Whereas here, at the moment, I'm still kind of like, well, send home who you like, because we haven't got that kind of asthma.
No.
Oh my God, there's this phenomenal bit of sewing.
That's a good point. Very good point. But we will tune in because we've got a show to deliver, and that's Unpicked to you. Let us know what you thought in the comments. Next week, holiday week.
Holiday week, or as I like to call it, high garment week.
As
I scroll down the promenade with my high-necked dress.
Wonderful. That was Deborah. See, these sewers who we keep referring back to.
She was phenomenal. I mean, I felt like I victimised Deborah, but that was her style. But you know, that stood out, and we had a good laugh about things like that. And at the moment, I know we're only 2 weeks in, but I don't feel we're there yet.
No. I think we will as we start losing a few more sowers, but sadly that means losing more before we find them. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for all your comments. Pop them all in. We read them and we reply. I was doing like proper school reports last night and catching up with them all. Love it. Really
I was going to reply, but then when it went over 50, I was like, oh, I can't keep up with this.
Absolutely love it. There we are. That's Sports Week done. Can't wait to see you all next week for Holiday Week. Cheers, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.